Okay, hello again, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining Dragon Trail International for our August webinar. Today's topic is influencer marketing for Chinese outbound tourism, with a focus on the most recent developments and most important new trends that you should know about before launching or updating your own influencer marketing strategy for China. My name is Sienna Perulus-Cook, and I'm Dragon Trail's Director of Marketing and Communications. I will be presenting the webinar on my own today, but with a huge amount of information shared with me by Dragon Trail colleagues about influencer marketing campaigns. Before getting to that part, I'm going to start off today's presentation with an overview of some of the biggest news, trends, and developments in the Chinese outbound travel market now, with information relating to all world regions. After that, I'll turn to our main topic with a look at why influencer marketing is important for reaching Chinese consumers, tips for newcomers to the Chinese market, some niche demographics that you may want to consider with your influencer marketing, the growing relationship between influencer marketing and sales for Chinese outbound travel, and finally, a really cool new marketing tool from Rednote called Kobeitong. At the end of the presentation, I can answer your questions in a Q&A session, so please do feel free to send in any questions that you may have during the webinar using the Q&A button on your Zoom control panel, and I'll answer as many as I can at the end. I am recording today's session, and later today we'll send out a link to the recording as well as the webinar slides to all attendees. So you will receive all of the content from today's presentation to look back over yourself or to share with colleagues. In case you're attending a Dragon Trail webinar for the first time today, I wanted to briefly introduce who we are. Dragon Trail International is our company headquartered in Beijing. And since our founding in 2009, we've focused on marketing for Chinese outbound tourism, working with brands and businesses around the world, including destinations, airlines, hotels, and attractions and others to help them reach Chinese consumers and the Chinese travel trade. Our services include B2C and B2B marketing and content creation, including influencer marketing, offline, virtual, and hybrid events, research and strategy consulting, and market representation and PR services. You can find more information about our services, case studies of our work, and lots of free resources on Chinese outbound tourism and marketing in China on our website, www.dragontrail.com. So let's start with some of the latest news about Chinese travel. It has now been just over 2.5 years since China reopened for tourism after the pandemic. So I'd like to look at how the outbound travel market is doing now. There are different ways of looking at this. And of course, the most obvious one is to just look at the total numbers of cross-border travel and the whole global market. However, this really doesn't tell the whole story. So we're also going to look at different world regions in the slides to come. In July, China's National Immigration Authority said that they had recorded 159 million border crossings by mainland Chinese citizens in the first half of the year, which was a 15.9% year-on-year increase. Now, this includes all of the outbound trips and all of the inbound trips by mainland Chinese nationals, but it does seem to put us on track to meet or even exceed the 2019 number of 155 million outbound trips by the end of this year, especially with the summer holidays and October Golden Week holiday still to be counted in the second half of the year. A half-year update on the Chinese consumer market published by McKinsey recently stated that outbound travel has now fully recovered, with international air passenger traffic exceeding 2019 levels in the first and second quarters of the year. Just looking at the number of international flights, these were up to nearly 90% of pre-pandemic levels by July, according to Flight Radar, with an increase of more than 13% year on year. And meanwhile, the official data on mainland Chinese passport ownership is at just over 11% of the population, with more than 160 million valid passports now in circulation. So here, too, things seem to be recovered to pre-pandemic levels. However, the recovery of Chinese outbound tourism looks totally different depending on the world region and even the individual country. We'll start with Asia. This is where most Chinese travelers are going, with more than 75% of flights headed to East and Southeast Asia in July. Chinese tourism to Japan in the first 4 months of the year was up nearly 7% from pre-pandemic levels, and this continues to be the most popular international destination. South Korea was around 90% recovered in the first half of the year, and the second half looks like it'll be even better, since South Korea will be visa-free for Chinese tour groups just in time for the October Golden Week holiday. In Southeast Asia, things have not been going very well for Thailand, which has seen a year-on-year decrease in Chinese tourism, and they're now projecting 5 million Chinese arrivals for 2025, in contrast to 11 million that visited in 2019. On the other hand, Chinese travel to Vietnam and Malaysia is booming, with huge increases compared to last year, and also huge increases in Chinese tourism to Cambodia compared to last year. Another area of the world with dramatic growth is Central Asia. Visa-free Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan were already reporting very significant increases in Chinese arrivals in 2024, and this is continuing this year. There's been a large number of new flights launched between China and Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Mongolia, and Tajikistan recently. And incredibly, the number of flights from China to Kazakhstan in July was up by 217% compared to 2019. And the number of flights to Mongolia was up by 237%. In Oceania, Australia and New Zealand have both seen very strong year-on-year growth, with new flights and government investment in and attention to growing the Chinese tourism market. Neither country is reaching pre-pandemic arrival numbers just yet, however. And in one final development for the Asia-Pacific region, India recently started issuing tourist visas to Chinese citizens for the first time in 5 years. Now, looking at heading over to Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, data published by Ctrip this June showed a 28% year-on-year increase in travel to Africa, with significantly larger increases for Morocco, South Africa, and Kenya, which were 3 of the top destinations in Africa. The Middle East also continues to see strong growth despite geopolitical instability in the region. This doesn't seem to be putting a dent in the rapid development of travel to Saudi Arabia and the UAE, with a number of new flights launched this summer. Oman has also kicked off its China market outreach this year, and it will get its first direct flight connection with China in November, with a twice-weekly route between Beijing and Muscat. Europe continues to stand out as the most in-demand long-haul region, and our surveys of Chinese consumers and the Chinese travel trade highlight high interest and high potential for this world region, particularly Western Europe. Norway has enjoyed a lot of growth this year, with increases in visa applications on Ctrip up by more than 80% this summer, and similar increases in visa applications for Italy and Germany. Data from Tourist España, the Spanish tourism board, also shows that Chinese tourism to Spain is now above 2019 levels and continuing to grow. And data from the Italian tourism board highlights strong growth as well. Now, looking at the Americas, there's a big difference between North and South, or kind of English-speaking and Latin America. Until the end of last year, Canada was only allowing 6 round-trip flights per week and had banned direct flights to Beijing. So unsurprisingly then, visitor numbers were down by a lot. And then despite significant growth from 2023, 2024's arrivals only reached 38% of pre-pandemic levels. The Canadian government did drop all of those flight restrictions at the end of last year. And as of May, there were 30 flights per week, with 6 additional flights being added over the next several weeks from now. Arrivals were up 4% year on year by May, but they don't seem likely to approach pre-pandemic levels anytime soon. The US also has significant flight restrictions still in place, keeping flight connections between China and the US stuck at 26% of pre-pandemic levels. Arrivals in the first half of this year were around half of pre-pandemic levels with 2.5% year-on-year growth. But it seems like things actually might be going in a downward direction now, since Chinese arrivals in June and July were down by more than 11% year-on-year, according to preliminary data released by the US government's International Trade Administration. A recent report on summer travel from the Trip.com group's Flight AI intelligence platform showed that the Americas was the only world region with negative year-on-year growth in Chinese flight searches. And the report said this was because of the decrease in flight searches for the US. The picture in Latin America is much more optimistic. Argentina just announced a new visa-free policy for Chinese visitors who already hold US visas, and China Eastern Airlines is launching the first direct flights from China to Argentina in December, which go via New Zealand. Mexico is increasing outreach to China and working with Dragon Trail on a major tourism board event in Beijing at the end of September. And Brazil is also resuming its China outreach this year, having already surpassed pre-pandemic levels of arrivals last year. So that is all the news for now, but do make sure that you're signed up for our monthly newsletter and following us on LinkedIn for regular updates, since there are new reports and policy changes and data coming out all the time. But now it's time to turn to the main topic of today's webinar, which of course is influencer marketing for Chinese outbound tourism. So let's start by first considering why travel brands should consider doing influencer marketing at all for China, using data from Dragon Trail's own consumer surveys over the past year and a half. In terms of influences on outbound destination choice, we found that promotions by key opinion leaders, or KOLs, was the most influential kind of marketing and significantly more effective than content published directly by a tourism board or embassy. When it came to looking for destination information, again, KOLs were one of the top sources chosen by 36%, just below Ctrip and personal friends, family, and acquaintances. We also found that around half of travelers said they were interested in destination content shared by KOLs. Next month, we'll have even more information to share about how Chinese consumers are following and interacting with influencer travel content, since we're asking more about this topic in our next consumer survey. But for now, I think that we have a pretty clear picture that influencer content is one of the most important kinds of content out there when it comes to choosing destinations and looking for travel information. Now, there's a lot of terminology around Chinese influencer marketing. That's always getting updated. So especially for those of you who might be new to this topic, I'd like to define some of those terms and talk about the different kinds of influencers that you might work with. So the first kind of influencer on my list here is a celebrity. And I've included them because many tourism destinations and businesses like hotels do work with Chinese celebrities, and this can deliver a very significant boost to visibility and social media engagement. We've seen this especially recently with an actor named Yu Shur, who is traveling in Queensland, Australia. Just one post by Tourism Australia sharing a video of his trip generated nearly 1/3 of all engagements with all National Tourism Board content on Weibo in the first quarter of this year. There are many other recent examples of posts featuring celebrities that generated spikes in engagement for brands like Holiday Inn, the Abu Dhabi Tourism Board, and the Marianas Islands, to name a few examples. The exposure potential is very big here, but it's not targeted. And I do think that a lot of the social media boost can be just because many celebrities' fans will like anything that that celebrity does, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll be engaging with that brand in the long term. But celebrity marketing is casting a very wide net, and it does significantly boost exposure and engagement, at least in the short term, and maybe with some people in the long term as well. But when we talk about influencer marketing, this usually doesn't refer to celebrity content, and we're usually talking more about KOLs or key opinion leaders. These are professional influencers who usually focus on one or a few key topics like travel, beauty, lifestyle, or photography. In terms of their follower numbers, this can vary quite a lot, and it also depends on the social media platform. And most of these professional influencers are active across kind of a wide spread of social media platforms as well. Now, what really defines KOLs is that social media promotion is their job. So you can expect a very high quality of output and professional level photos, writing, and/or video, as well as a strong follower base of consumers who are also interested in those topics, such as travel and fashion, and think of those KOLs as trusted sources. A newer term that is very important right now in Chinese influencer marketing is KOC, or key opinion consumer. These are not professional full-time influencers, but they do produce high quality content, and they may have quite targeted interests and audiences, such as family travel bloggers, for instance. A lot of campaigns now may work with KOCs in addition to or even instead of KOLs. And one of the reasons that KOC marketing is so popular right now is because of the algorithms for popular social media platforms, Xiaohongshu or Rednote, as well as Douyin, which is the original Chinese version of TikTok. So the way the algorithms work for these popular platforms is that they serve content to users based on the performance of that content or post, rather than because of the number of followers that the post creator has. So for example, each post on Rednote starts with being served to the same number of people. So that's a guaranteed basic audience. Then depending on how the post performs with that small group, then it's served to larger and larger audiences. And if the post performance continues to be good in terms of engagement, then it will reach bigger and bigger audiences. So by working with a lot of small influencers who are all creating high quality content, there's more of a chance that some of those posts are going to go viral and move up the funnel and reach a lot of users. But there's one more term to know, and that is KOS, or key opinion sales. This is a newer term. However, sales-focused influencer accounts have been around for a long time. In the past, they were more like WeChat official accounts that would promote travel deals and discounts, and people would follow them to find those deals and discounts. But as we'll see, kind of more KOL individual style influencers are increasingly making direct sales or helping consumers to navigate to sales channels, in addition to just promoting brand awareness and image. And some influencers are especially strong in this area. So now let's get to some use cases and examples of influencer marketing to illustrate some of the things I've been talking about, and also further answer some questions that you may have about who should be doing influencer marketing and how. I'd like to talk first about the value of influencer marketing for brands that aren't as well known in China and are just getting started with their China marketing. KOL should be part of your PR and branding strategy, and you should really think of them as the media. So for example, if you're organizing a media event or a fam trip, you'll want to invite KOLs as well as more traditional media, such as magazine editors. This spring, we organized the first ever Chinese media fam trip to the Sultanate of Oman, and this was comprised of 3 traditional media and 4 travel KOLs. At follow-up events in Beijing and Chengdu, we also invited additional KOLs, and the KOLs who went on the fam trip came to those events to present about their travel experience. This fam trip resulted in more than 160 pieces of media coverage and 12 million views. And it's really essential for starting to seed that travel inspiration for this very new and off the beaten track destination. So now, for example, if you go to Redno and you search for Oman or Oman tourism, what will come up right at the top of the search results are some of these posts by the KOLs from their fam trip. A somewhat similar case is a KOL fam trip we organized last month for the country of Georgia. Georgia has already seen a big increase in Chinese visitors in recent years, but it's still a pretty niche destination. We worked together with the Sina Media Company. They own Sina Weibo, and they recommended all of the influencers and then also gave them a free boost to their posts on Sina Weibo from the fam trip. The KOLs had an average of 2 million followers each, covering travel, fashion, lifestyle, self-driving, photography, and outdoors adventure. Although there was this promotion with Sina Weibo, the KOLs also posted across WeChat, Redno, Douyin, Ctrip, and other platforms. And this kind of broad coverage across various online platforms is really a key feature of many KOL campaigns these days. So if you're working with a professional KOL, you can be pretty much assured that they'll be active across various different Chinese social media platforms, and they'll be able to adapt their content from the fam trip to put on all of those different platforms and reach audiences there. Of course, working with influencers is not just for destinations, but for brands too. Especially hotels often have to contend with the fact that they might be really unknown in China. Their brand is unknown in China, even if it's famous in Europe or another world region. And this can make it very hard for them to attract Chinese guests. So we recently worked with Baglioni Hotels on a major KOL campaign with 11 influencers across their Maldives and Italian properties, giving the brand an enormous amount of exposure across Redno, Douyin, WeChat, Weibo, and Ctrip, and targeting a few different traveler types and demographics. And we'll see an example of that a little bit later on. Now, the next topic that I want to cover is target demographics for influencer campaigns. So when I say influencer or KOL, you might have a certain image that comes to mind, maybe of a younger, fashionable woman. But there is definitely more diversity than that. And the Chinese outbound travel market is also very diverse with certain segments and demographics that brands might especially want to target, depending on what's the best match for that brand. So one of these is the senior demographic, or silver travelers. This is a growing market with a lot of potential, and retirees use the internet and follow influencers too. In fact, there are some very famous silver KOLs. The biggest of these might be Lama Beijing, whose Chinese name translates more directly as fashion grandma. They rose to fame in 2019 with a viral video of these women walking around Beijing wearing matching qipaos, and they quickly became fashion icons. They now have 1.38 million followers on Redno and 2.3 million followers on Douyin, as well as popular accounts on WeChat and WeChat channels. The women of Lama Beijing became famous for their fashion and their elegance, but they have become more all-rounded lifestyle influencers over the past 6 years. So online, they share makeup tips for older women. They talk about how to have fulfilling social lives in retirement, and do paid promotions for cookware, cleaning products, comfortable shoes, these kinds of products. Since China reopened at the start of 2023, they have also become international travel KOLs. This spring, 2 of Lama Beijing's members partnered with Chinese polar cruise company 66 Degrees Expeditions, doing a live stream session from Dragon Trail Studios in Beijing, and then also traveling to the Arctic the following month, where they did a series of live streams, videos, and photo posts. The silver demographic is a key market for this kind of luxury adventure travel, targeting experienced travelers with the time and the money to visit places like the Arctic and Antarctica. Another very important demographic, particularly for summer travel and Chinese New Year travel, is family travelers. Interestingly, family travelers have now overtaken couples as the key demographic for Chinese tourism to the Maldives. And they accounted for 65% of the travelers who booked Maldives trips on OTA Tunio last Chinese New Year. Tourism brands need to be aware of these shifts as well. So when we worked with Baglioni on their KOL campaign for their Maldives resort, we arranged for one family travel blogger to go there with her 4-year-old daughter, as well as another KOL who was recently married and could kind of cover the honeymoon angle for more traditional couples-oriented promotion for a Maldives resort. One of the major trends in Chinese outbound tourism right now is the exploration of niche interests through travel, and a move away from generic group tours and towards very personalized, customized itineraries. By working with niche influencers who focus on very specific topics, you can tap into this trend and also access followers who are probably more engaged and stickier. A great example of this is an upcoming influencer campaign for the Polish Tourism Board, for which we recruited the influencers. In October, Poland will host the International Chopin Piano Competition, and they wanted to find 2 micro-influencers specializing in classical music and art, with follower numbers between 10,000 and 100,000 and active on Rednote and or Douyin. So we came up with a short list of 5 candidates that all fit that brief, and then the tourism board picked the 2 that they want to work with in October. So one is a music and fashion KOL who recently graduated from the Zhejiang Conservatory of Music, and the other is a lifestyle and travel KOL who's also an amateur pianist and often shares content of his piano playing. Now, let's talk about sales as the new frontier for influencer marketing in travel. This is a post-pandemic trend. Earlier this year, we did a webinar on hotel marketing and invited a KOL to speak who specializes in hotel promotion. And she explained that in the years before the pandemic, her work was really just about marketing, aesthetics, and brand awareness. But since 2020, her followers have started to ask for her help in booking hotels. She says that including a sales link under one video can generate up to 1 million renminbi in sales. And she once booked 200 room nights for a hotel in the French ski resort of Courchevel, as well as 50 room nights for a hotel in Andorra. Another example is this influencer on the right with posing with some lizards. His name is Chen Ray. Scientist, a zoologist, and a Douyin influencer, and he specializes in exotic animals. So he's very much a niche interest kind of influencer, but he also has very strong sales abilities due to his popularity and engaged followers. So he recently sold 40 places on polar cruises for 66 Degrees expeditions, and these are extremely high value products. So making sales through influencer marketing is something that you can do by working with influencers who have strong sales abilities and experience, and by organizing live streaming sessions. But it can also be as simple as getting influencers to include a call to action link in their post to direct consumers to where they can book. So the example here is one that I shared before last year in our family travel webinar about a KOC promotion that we did with Disneyland Resort, California. So for this, we worked with KOCs that were all locally based in and around California, and many of them were family bloggers. And they included booking links to buy Disneyland tickets on Ctrip, Fliggy, KK Day, and Klook. And this resulted in a minimum year-on-year increase of 16% in ticket sales on those platforms. Now, lastly, I want to introduce a new marketing function from Rednote that helps you to find new KOCs, easily boost user-generated content, or UGC, and promote sales too. So Kobe Tong is a kind of reputation and UGC monitoring tool that is technically, it's only available to accounts that have received more than 200 brand mentions over the last 90 days, though there are ways to bypass that requirement if you need to. It allows you to easily see and look through and sort all of the UGC posts mentioning your brand keywords, and then you can contact those creators directly and also pay to boost the posts. if you like the content and want even more people to see it. So it helps you to find KOCs who are already promoting your brand and then amplify this content even more. You can also talk to the creator about collaborating further. So perhaps you could tell them you're going to pay to boost their posts, and would they also be interested to add a comment to their own post with a call to action sales link. This is something that we did here with Tourism Events Queensland to promote a new Brisbane flight on China Southern Airlines. This Kobe Tong campaign for Tourism Events Queensland, we ran it alongside a KOL and KOC campaign and promotional posts from the Queensland Tourism Board's own official account. And we found that the Kobe Tong part of the campaign delivered some of the best results in terms of click-through rates, cost per engagement, and cost per click. So from these many examples, I think it should be clear that Dragon Trail has a lot of resources and experiences when it comes to influencer marketing. It's something that we've been doing for a long time, and services that we provide include everything from organizing every detail of a fam trip and accompanying the KOLs on the fam trip to just providing you with a short list and contacts for KOLs based on your requirements. We have databases of more than 400 KOLs, including everyone from award-winning famous travel photographers to micro-influencers focused on piano music. So if you have any specific needs or questions about your own influencer marketing that we can help with, please don't hesitate to get in touch directly after the webinar. And we're very happy to set up a meeting to discuss how we could help. Before I open up to the Q&A session, I'd like to share the details of next month's webinar, which is coming up on Wednesday, September 24th. Dragon Trail's research team and I will be giving you the very first look at the results of our latest Chinese consumer survey, with lots of data on how Chinese travelers are planning to spend their October Golden Week holiday, as well as more information on the impact of influencer marketing, shopping during overseas trips, airline choice, the use of AI in travel, and more. You can sign up for the webinar now. We'll include this link in the slides that we send out to everyone later today, and you can also find it right now by going to the event section of the Dragon Trail website. I would also like to remind you that you can find lots more information about Dragon Trail's marketing services and case studies of our work on our website, alongside lots of free resources, including consumer and trade surveys and recordings of all of our past webinars. We share regular news and updates about Chinese travel and marketing trends on our blog, our social media channels, and in our monthly newsletter, so there are lots of ways to stay connected. So now I'm ready to take your questions, and you can send those in by using the Q&A button on your Zoom control panel.